Dear students, you are welcome in this class. Now we are going to discuss fundamentals of primary plant nutrients, basics of primary plant nutrients. Particularly, we are going to understand the meaning of primary nutrients, their role and deficiency symptoms, learn about causes of deficiency and occurrence of deficiency, as well as corrective measures of primary nutrients, that is NPK. So cereal plant, seeds of flowering plants of the grass family, Graminaceae or Gramine or Poaceae, cultivated for the food value of their base. Immobilization is the inorganic nitrogen is converted to organic nitrogen form. Luxury consumption is absorption of a nutrient by plant well in excess of the quantities required. Macronutrient, the plant nutrient found at relatively high concentration in plant, NPK, calcium, magnesium, sulfur. Micronutrients are minor nutrients essential for plant growth, but are required in much smaller amounts than those primary nutrients. NPK, like NPK. So micronutrients are 8 in number. Mineralization is opposite of immobilization. Nutrient recovery is proportion of applied nutrient removed by the crop, usually expressed as a percentage. Primary nutrients refers to N, P, and K in fertilizers. Now, we start nitrogen actually. We start nitrogen. Now, I would like to ask the students, what is reactive nitrogen? What is reactive nitrogen forms? And what is non-reactive nitrogen? Can anybody tell me what is reactive nitrogen and what is non-reactive nitrogen? I think I came to the wrong link. Dear students, you are welcome in this class. Now we are going to discuss basics of some primary nutrients, that is NPK. We will try to see the causes of deficiency, occurrence of deficiency, and corrective measures, and some terminology you have seen. And now I was asking you a question, what is reactive nitrogen and what is non-reactive nitrogen? Non-reactive and reactive nitrogen. Nitrogen, do you know it? Anybody? Anybody from soil science? Anyone from soil science, any student or environmental science? Who is from environmental science? Anybody from environmental science?
Yes, sir.
So do you have idea what is reactive nitrogen and non-reactive nitrogen? Reactive and non.
So reactive nitrogens are nitrous oxide and ammonia.
Good. Actually, reactive nitrogen is a nitrogen form that takes part in reactions, that can react to other elements. That is your reactive nitrogen. And non-reactive nitrogen is the nitrogen that cannot take part in any reaction. It does not change. It does not have reaction. So chemical reaction, I mean. So that is, in the atmosphere, we have about 78% nitrogen. This is molecular nitrogen, a gas, which is N2. So this N2 is actually non-reactive nitrogen. And other forms, as told by you, other nitrogen oxides or reduced form, they are all reactive nitrogen. That is the difference. Hope it is clear to you. So reactive nitrogen is written by NR, capital N, small r. Reactive nitrogen includes all forms of nitrogen that are biologically, photochemically, and radiatively active. They are active forms. Compounds of nitrogen that are reactive include the following. There are a number of compounds already told by student: nitrous oxide, nitrate, nitrite, ammonia, and ammonium. So these are all reactive forms, and the N2 in the atmosphere is your non-reactive form. The non-reactive form of nitrogen is N2 and makes up about 80% of our atmosphere. Some people say 78%, some say 80%. Now, role of nitrogen in plant. It is, as usually most of us know, that it is part of proteins, enzymes, and chlorophyll. So it is very, very necessary for the synthesis of all these three. And it helps in the rapid growth, increasing seed and fruit production, improving the quality of leaf and forage crops. Particularly, it makes forage crops succulent. Succulence is there. Often comes from fertilizers and from the air. Legumes get their nitrogen from atmosphere, water, or rainfall. So there are many means. Many of you must have seen nitrogen cycle. So in nitrogen cycle, soil or terrestrial system is also there. So you can get different sources of nitrogen supply, like your irrigation water, fertilizers, manures, biological nitrogen fixation, and it can deposit from atmosphere also. So there are many, many sources for nitrogen. Now you can see the approximate fraction and common ranges of concentration of nitrogen containing compounds in plant. Fraction of total nitrogen. So whatever nitrogen is there in the plant system, 85% of that is in proteins. 85% nitrogen in plant body is in proteins. Then 5% nitrogen is in nucleic acid. And then less than 5% soluble organic nitrogen. And then less than 1% is nitrate, and less than 0.1% is ammonium. And then concentration microgram per gram dry weight, you can see this is not required at the moment, but this is important. That means proteins are the major compounds in the plant system which contain largest fraction of nitrogen, that is 85%. Then nucleic acids, soluble organic, nitrate, and ammonium. So this is how nitrogen is distributed in the plant system. Now, concentration of total nitrogen in plant parts. Which part has more concentration? You have shoot part, you have root part, you have leaves, stem, buds, flower. Variety of things are there in the plant, different body parts. So you can see concentration of total nitrogen in plant parts of percentage dry weight basis. So in leaves, you can get 1 to 6% nitrogen, and range and optimum is more than 3%. These are again general figures for plants, common plants. Stems 1 to 4%, roots 1 to 3%, fruits 1 to 6%, seeds 2 to 7%. So this is just to give you idea. This is just to give you idea that how much the plant parts are richer in nitrogen. So here you can see that seeds, they on an average contain more nitrogen than other plant parts. Now, concentration of nitrogen in leaves of various crops under cultivated conditions. So here you can see low levels, sufficient levels, and high levels. So if you see grassy grains or cereals, so you can see there less than 1.5%, and optimum is 1.8 to 3.6% in the grains, and high is more than 3.6. Legume grains, you can see. So I've shown this slide just to have comparative idea that which crops have more nitrogen percentage in their plant body and which have less. So here you can see grassy have less than 1.5% and highest is more than 3.6%. Legume grains, you can see they are rich in nitrogen, less than 3.6%, then they are low, 3.8 to 5% sufficient, and more than 5% high. But you see the case of sugarcane. Sugarcane less than 1 to 1.5% is low, 1.5 to 2.7 and more than 2.7. So you can see in general where you get more biomass, there you will get less nitrogen percentage. Potato, sugarcane, these biomass of these crops are high, therefore concentration in them is low. Now, role of nitrogen in cereal, because largest quantity of nitrogen is consumed by cereals in the world. We consume largest nitrogenous fertilizer to produce cereal crops like rice, wheat, maize, pulse millet, or sorghum, etc. So role of nitrogen in cereal is very, very important. We can understand. And as usual, it is part of amino acids, nucleic acids, nucleotides, and chlorophyll. Promotes faster growth, plant height, and tiller number. Increases leaf size. So therefore, whenever you apply nitrogen, your leaf area index is more. Enhances spikelets per panicle, percentage filled spikelet in each panicle, increases protein content, drives the demand for other macronutrients such as P and K. So you can see that nitrogen has positive interaction with phosphorus and potassium. If your plant is getting nitrogen, it will get more phosphorus and potassium from the soil, even if you do not apply phosphorus and potassium. Nitrogen deficiency symptoms, you can see light green to yellow, appearance of leaves, especially older leaves, stunted growth, and poor food development. So you can see the drying of leaves have occurred. This is severe nitrogen deficiency in maize crop. And it is started from the tip. You can see here, it is started from the tip. The drying is started from here. Deficiency symptoms in cereals, reduced growth, and plants are yellowish in color. Deficiency first appear on lower leaves and later the whole plant becomes yellowish green. Death of leaves may occur under severe nitrogen deficiency. This point is important. If the deficiency of nitrogen continues, the plant death may also occur. Affected leaves are narrow, short, erect, and lemon yellowish color. In some areas, the entire field may appear yellowish. So it is quite easy to identify nitrogen deficiency. Nitrogen deficiency prominent at critical growth stages in cereals, trilling and panicle initiation. It is more serious when the demand for nitrogen is high. Nitrogen deficiency causes reduction in trilling, leaf size, plant height, and field grains number in rice. Similar with sulfur deficiency, but first appear on older leaves or all leaves on the plant. That is the difference in sulfur and nitrogen deficiency. Under both, there is uniform chlorosis, but with the difference that nitrogen deficiency comes on older leaves and sulfur deficiency comes on younger leaves. And then one more deficiency is also similar to nitrogen and sulfur deficiency, that is iron deficiency. But in iron deficiency, I think veins remain green. Is it true? Deficiency of iron, do the veins remain green in case of iron deficiency?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. There is intervenous.
Intravenous.
Okay, intervenal chlorosis. So it is also starting at in the young leaves, but if you see sulfur, in case of sulfur, you will not have such kind of variation. It will be uniform chlorosis of veins as well as intervenal area. But in case of iron, your veins will remain green. That is the difference between sulfur and iron deficiency. So nitrogen deficiency is similar, but difference is plant part, which plant part it is coming. Also mild nitrogen deficiency is similar to iron deficiency, but the iron deficiency first appear on emerging leaves with intervenal chlorosis. Now you can see nitrogen deficiency. This is complete browning of the leaves, and it can dry and once it has dried, it cannot recover back. Do you think it will recover back? No, it cannot recover back. Such a great damage has been done. Nitrogen deficiency in cereals, this is example of maize. Even legumes can also suffer from nitrogen deficiency. Can you tell me what are the conditions when legumes will suffer from nitrogen deficiency? Any idea, any guess? See, sometimes legumes will also suffer from nitrogen deficiency. So what are the conditions when legumes will suffer from nitrogen deficiency? Answer is so simple.
Sir, high rainfall.
Yeah,
Sir, high rainfall, non-aerobic conditions when microbes are unable to fix nitrogen.
actually, I'm sorry, I could not hear you properly.
Sir, high rainfall conditions.
High rainfall conditions where
It causes non-aerobic conditions in soil.
means nitrate leaching can occur under those conditions. So nitrate will not be available in the soil. Do you mean that?
Secondly, sir, nitrogen fixation also decrease.
Yeah,
Rate of nitrogen fixation.
that is most important. That is the answer.
Sir,
Yeah.
hello.
Yes,
Sir,
yes.
when a legume plant is sown to a land when it is fast, when there is no nodule or that microbes are available, then also that legumes are able to fix the nitrogen. We should have to externally apply some that microbial consortia.
My dear student, just repeat it one time more and in slow voice. Yeah, please ask your question again. Yeah.
Sir, it is like that when we sow any legume plant in a land for the first time, there is no microbes available for that nitrogen fixation from the atmosphere. So we should have to externally apply some microbial consortia like rhizobium. Then only they can fix the nitrogen.
Yes. So I think he is saying that if you are taking a legume first time in a field, then it is likely that it will not have nitrogen fixation. So under such cases, legume can suffer nitrogen deficiency. So overall, that means that this is the reason because of which biological nitrogen fixation is not there. Hence, the legume will suffer. That is good idea. Did you mean that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So fine. So it is good answer that if you are taking a legume first time in a field, normally the kind of bacteria or rhizobium required may not be there in the land, and in that case nitrogen fixation will not be there. So anyhow, legumes will face nitrogen deficiency normally when there is no biological nitrogen fixation. But what are the factors that will affect the reduction in BNF by a legume? We need to see those factors. So one factor, as suggested by him, could be inoculation. Taking first time, you are not inoculating. But there can be some other factors also. For example, if our soil is poisonous, soil having some toxic things, so they can also affect the rhizobium growth, or any soil factor, any climatic factor that will affect the growth of the rhizobium or formation of nodules will affect the this nitrogen fixation. So hence, if nitrogen fixation is less, then the legume will suffer from nitrogen deficiency. And also during initial period, say 1 month, I think at least for 1 month, they need external nitrogen. They are not able to fix nitrogen initially. It takes time to form the nodules. It takes time to get the root growth. First root growth will be there, then nodule formation will be there. So it takes time. So therefore we apply starter dose to leguminous crop. So overall, many times legume also suffer from nitrogen deficiency. If you take the case of pulses, in most of the pulses, Indian Institute of Pulses Research Institute, Kanpur, recommends foliar spray of urea or DAP 2% foliar spray of DAP or urea should be done 2 times in pulses. This is a recommendation. So that means you are supplying nitrogen through foliar feeding. It is giving some advantage, although these pulses fix nitrogen. This is important. So whatever nitrogen is required, if you give a starter dose, for remaining requirement, they are self-sufficient. In the beginning, they require. And also it is important that they leave, there is concurrent transfer of nitrogen. When legume is growing in the field, through root exudation, a significant quantity of nitrogen is transferred to the soil right when legumes are growing. And when you harvest legumes, when they are not there in the field, and then succeeding crop will take the advantage of nitrogen, which was released by the legumes and it was in soil, and also nitrogen which is there in the roots, because roots CN ratio will be narrow, they will decompose fast. So the succeeding crop or next crop will take advantage of nitrogen which was released as root exudates plus nitrogen which was there in the roots. So that is how these legumes are really very, very important. Now you see, it is quite interesting that most of the students and people think that if you apply excess nitrogen, then plants suffer from diseases. But there are cases where lower supply, decreased supply of nitrogen increases the disease incidence. You can see these examples. Effect of nitrogen level on disease severity of several diseases. First column is pathogen or disease. Disease are caused by variety of bacteria, fungi, and so on. So you see, these are example of fungi. Obligate parasite, Puccinia graminis. If low nitrogen supply is there, so disease is less. Decrease means decrease in disease incidence. So for Puccinia graminis, it causes certain disease in plants, say cereal plants, and then low nitrogen supply is there. Disease is also low. If you increase the nitrogen supply, disease increases. Similarly, if it is Erysiphe graminis, low nitrogen supply, disease is low. High nitrogen, excess nitrogen means increase in disease incidence. So this is the common thing that students know, people know, that high nitrogen supply increases incidence of the disease and low nitrogen supply decreases incidence of the disease. But in case of facultative parasites like Xanthomonas vesicatoria, if your supply of the nitrogen is low, the disease increases. If supply of the nitrogen is high, then disease decreases. So if one is expecting this kind of disease by Xanthomonas, then you need to increase the nitrogen supply. If you increase the nitrogen supply, the disease incidence will reduce. So it is not always true that if you increase the level of nitrogen in the soil, disease incidence will always increase. It is not true. Many times, by increasing the levels of nitrogen in the soil or supply of nitrogen to the plant, disease incidence can be decreased, as is the case of Xanthomonas vesicatoria, Alternaria solani, Fusarium oxysporum. These have been tested in different crops against different diseases. Here is the summary of the things that very clearly establishes the fact that sometimes, particularly when you have facultative parasite, the nitrogen application, higher nitrogen rates or availability will decrease the disease incidence. Now, nitrogen excess may be there. So what is going to happen to the plants? Dark green with abundant foliage. If you have high levels of nitrogen, restricted root system. Root growth will be restricted if you have high levels of nitrogen supply. Few blossoms. The flowering will be affected and ultimately restricted fruit set. Increased susceptibility to lodging and drought, another problem of excess nitrogen. Increased disease incidence and insect invasion. Of course, in the last we have seen that it is not always increased disease, but in majority of the cases where you have obligate parasite, disease incidence increases. In severe excess, the crop may fail to yield grains and delayed maturity due to excess nitrogen. Now, what are the areas that are affected by nitrogen deficiency? It is, of course, widespread in Indian soils. You have seen, I've shown you the data, fertility status of soil. Major source of nitrogen is organic matter. Coarse texture soils are poor in nitrogen due to low organic matter content. Prevalence of submerged environment for a long time. So you can get nitrogen losses by denitrification or volatilization. Intensive cropping without using adequate doses. We discussed this nutrient depletion. Legumes may also suffer from nitrogen deficiency. Now, causes of nitrogen deficiency. What are the reasons? Soils may be inherently low in organic matter. By default, soils are low in organic matter, and you know nitrogen availability, 95% of the nitrogen in soil is organic nitrogen. So organic matter has great value in nitrogen management. Inadequate use of mineral and fertilizer or organic manures, low use absence of nitrogenous fertilizer, losses by volatilization, denitrification, leaching, and runoff, permanently submerged condition that reduce indigenous soil nitrogen supply. Heavy rainfall may result in increased nitrogen loss. So these are the important causes of nitrogen deficiency. And you can see this is very interesting. In the last practical, we have studied the mineralization of organic nitrogen, and we did some numerical also. So you can see estimated content and release of nitrogen from various soils. So nitrogen in soil kg per hectare. You can see type of soil, sands. In sands, the total nitrogen is low. That is 1400 kg per hectare. And then you can see the different kind of soils. They have different status of nitrogen. In general, if you see the heavier the texture of the soil, more is the total nitrogen. So you can see it may be 2200, 3100 likewise, the total nitrogen. You can work out, we did some numericals if you remember, and then annual release, estimating 2% annual mineralization rate of soil organic matter. So 2%, 28, 2%, 44. So you can see this much of nitrogen is released, but the release varies with the kind of soil. Deep peats have highest release. Corrective measures, if you have nitrogen deficiency, so what can be done for the management of nitrogen? Add organic matter, definitely you need to supply organic manures, green manures, as basal application, biofertilizers, azotobacter, azospilum, apply nitrogenous fertilizer as and when possible, and follow fertilization cycle. Means you need to supply it. There is no other choice. One choice could be to manage the losses. We can reduce the losses. Management is also important. If you do not burn your field, burning of the field is not done, then runoff of water can occur and it can carry some nitrates. So management is also important. If you do not apply it by right method, right dose, right time, then also you will get less recovery of the nutrients. So in case of nitrogen, for corrective measures, we need to apply the nutrients and also follow the pest management practices so that we can correct nitrogen deficiency with the less input of fertilizer and more efficiency. We can take green manure crops. Now we go to the phosphorus. Next is phosphorus. Role of phosphorus in plants. Formation of oils, it is necessary, sugars, starches. Transformation of solar energy into chemical energy. You remember about, you know about DAP, ATP, ADP, ATP, etc. They are required in photosynthesis. So helps in rapid growth, encourages blooming. Blooming means flowering, and root growth. Phosphorus often comes from fertilizer, bone meal, and rock phosphate. Of course, it is also there in the organic matter. What are the roles for cereals? Essential constituent of ATP, ADP, nucleotides, nucleic acids, and phospholipids. I assume that most of you understand the structure of nucleotides, nucleosides, DNA, RNA. We should know it. The agronomy student should, or NRM student should not lag behind. You should learn some chemistry, some organic chemistry. This is the time. Some fundamentals, at least basic things should be known to us. What is ATP, ADP, these things. Involved in energy storage and transfer and membrane integrity. And phosphorus also promotes tillering, root development, early flowering, and ripening, especially where the temperature is low. Increases estro strength and disease resistance. Like potassium, it also increases estro strength. And P deficiency symptoms are like this: darker green coloration than normal, means you will get dark green leaves with reddish purple cast. Some coloration will be there on the leaves, stunted plant growth and delay in plant development. In wheat, stunted growth, poor tilling, and delayed maturity. Deficiency symptoms in cereals: stunted growth of rice plant with reduced tilling. Leaves, particularly older ones, are narrow, short, very erect, and dark green. Stems are thin and plant development is reduced. Number of leaves, panicle, green panicle, are reduced. Young leaves appear to be healthy, but older leaves turn brown and eventually die. Red and purple colors may develop on leaves. Delayed maturity. In severe P deficiency, plant may not flower at all. Increased number of empty grains. So overall, you can see that phosphorus is very, very necessary for development of the roots and flowering of the plant. And it has a special value for the legume crops. Now you can see this phosphorus deficiency symptoms in pulp millet. You can see the purple color accumulation on the leaf. These are actually anthocyanin, the coloring agents. And you can see in rice, the tilling is reduced. On the right side, it is deficient in phosphorus, so tiller number has reduced. On the left side, it is sufficient supply of phosphorus. Now you can see the effect of phosphorus supply on disease severity. So you have seen for nitrogen already. Now see for phosphorus supply. So P application may increase the severity of diseases caused by sclerotina in many garden plants, premia in lettuce and phlogiston in wheat. So it is most of the time we know that adequate phosphorus supply reduces the incidence of diseases, but many times reverse can happen. So you can see the root diseases caused by rhizoctonia in wheat. So presence of nutrient means if you have sufficient supply of phosphorus, resistance increases with phosphorus application. For powdery mildew in cucumber, reduction in disease severity with P application. For root rot, rhizoctonia solani, fevavin, severity of the infection decreases with P supply. So you can see P application may increase the severity of diseases caused by sclerotina in many garden plants, bremia in lettuce and phlogiston in wheat. So these are also important, that certain diseases some are protected by phosphorus application and some it makes plants susceptible. Phosphorus excess may result in the micronutrient deficiency, particularly zinc deficiency. Zinc and phosphorus have antagonistic effect. If you increase the level of zinc in the soil much higher, then it will reduce the phosphorus deficiency phosphorus availability. And if your phosphorus is more higher relative to zinc, then the zinc deficiency will be there. The one who is having larger volume, large amount, will reduce the availability of the other. So what happens in case of phosphorus and zinc interaction? Optimum levels are to be determined. Then you will not have any antagonistic effect. Occurrence of P deficiency, just 2-3 minutes more. Major growth limiting factor in acid upland soils where soil P fixation is high. Soils particularly prone to phosphorus deficiency. Where you can find more phosphorus deficiency, coarse texture soils containing a small amount of organic matter and a small P reserve, sandy soils, you will have deficiency. Highly weathered clays, acid upland soils with high P fixation capacity, calcareous saline sodic soils, acid sulfate soils, soils having intensive cropping. So these are the areas where deficiency of sulfur will occur. Causes are low inherent capacity of soil to supply P, inadequate use of P fertilizer, low absence of P fertilizer, P immobilization by calcium phosphate or more fixation of phosphorus, crop establishment method, P deficiency is more in DSR compared to puddle transplanted or waterlogged rice, imbalance use of fertilizer, particularly excess use of N fertilizer with insufficient P application. Corrective measures: apply the appropriate dose of phosphatic fertilizer, add organic manures, use biofertilizer like PSB. So actually, I wish to take one lecture on phosphorus in soil, plant, and fertilizers. So I would cover all these aspects in that lecture, I wish. And some phosphatic fertilizers are there, like single superphosphate, triple superphosphate. Number of phosphatic fertilizers are there. They can be used to correct the phosphorus deficiency. So now we will start tomorrow this potassium. Continue here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So
Thank
today,
you, sir.
yeah,
Sir, happy Teachers Day.
yeah. So I accept greeting from all. Now I assume that everybody wanted to greet me, but because of this shortage of time, and not all can, it is not possible for all to greet also. So therefore, I accept that everyone here has greeted me, and really thank you very much. I love you and wish you a great happiness, wonderful life, good health. Thank you very much. Hope you will meet at 3:30. I think today students are organizing one function. I don't know whether you will join it or not. So, okay, bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you. So, dear students, good morning to all of you. And we continue with the same lecture, preliminary or basics of primary nutrients. And we started with some glossary, and then we could know reactive nitrogen and non-reactive nitrogen. And then we have seen the role of nitrogen, the level of nitrogen, concentration of nitrogen in soil and in plant, and different nitrogen containing compounds in the plant, proteins, nucleic acids, soluble organic nitrogen, SON, and ammonium. And then we have seen the concentration in cereals, legumes, and in some other crops. And we have seen the role of nitrogen in cereals and deficiency symptoms. We have seen cereals may also suffer from nitrogen deficiency. Legumes may also suffer from nitrogen deficiency. And nitrogen deficiency sometimes can invite the diseases, and excess also. Excess of nitrogen can also increase the incidence of diseases. But sometimes low level of nitrogen also increase the incidence of diseases. Excess nitrogen, mostly lodging can occur, and there can be imbalance between vegetative growth and reproductive growth. Like in case of chickpea, sometimes you can find a lot of vegetative growth, particularly when chickpea is grown in high fertile soils. Then it can accumulate more vegetation, more leaves, and then flowering is affected. So sometimes there may not be any flowering at all due to excess vegetative growth. Most of the Indian soils, coarse texture soils, are deficient in nitrogen. we've seen the causes of nitrogen deficiency, and we have seen the annual release of available nitrogen. You can calculate if you know the total nitrogen, you can calculate the quantity of total nitrogen, and then 2% of this is normally made available in 1 year. So you have seen heavy textured soils release more of available nitrogen. And what are the corrective measures? It is mostly INM, organic manures, fertilizers, and biofertilizers. Now we also started role of phosphorus, and we have seen the important deficiency symptoms, means green color, dark green color with coloration. Anthocyanin pigmentation is there, which is reddish in color. And we have seen deficiency symptoms in cereals, particularly reduced root growth, reduced flowering, and delayed maturity, decreased tillering due to phosphorus deficiency. And excess phosphorus may cause micronutrient deficiency, particularly iron or zinc. Occurrence of phosphorus deficiency, we have seen causes and corrective measures. Corrective measures, in this case, we can use organic manure. Certain biofertilizers are also available, and phosphatic fertilizers are there. So I will discuss in one of the lecture about the manufacture of fertilizer, how these phosphatic fertilizers are manufactured. And you can see that some have calcium, some have sulfur, some have nitrogen, and all have phosphorus, these phosphatic fertilizers. Now today we start with a role of potassium in plants. So what is major role? That it is involved in building of proteins, means synthesis of proteins, photosynthesis. It is good for food quality and reduction of diseases. Normally, if you have adequate or sufficient level of potassium in the plants, it can tolerate many diseases, makes plant more resistant to fungal diseases and insect attacks. So this is good, and good for healthy root development and crop quality. For instance, it improves texture, color, and combustibility of tobacco. So it is good, or it improves the quality in tobacco. Sugar, starch, and oil content is increased, and it is involved in translocation of sugars. Taste, size, and keeping quality of fruits improved. Then you can see potato, tobacco, and sugarcane use potassium, especially during their early growth stages. So actually these are starch-rich crops, and they require more potassium. Helps in CO2 assimilation, translocation of proteins and sugars, enzyme activity, cell division, reduction of nitrate, and fat synthesis. Regulation of the osmotic potential of plant cells. So here it has very important role. Many of you might be knowing that it is required for opening and closing. It is involved in the opening and closing of stomata. Activities activates many enzymes involved in respiration and photosynthesis. So it has so many roles. Number of roles are there played by potassium, but yet it is not part of any organic compound. Is it part of any organic compound in the plant system? Anybody has any idea?
No, sir.
Not at all. Good. Now, role of potassium in cereals. Osmoregulation, enzyme activation, regulates transpiration by stomata and transport of assimilates. So same role in general in other plants also. Provides strength to plant cell walls, increases leaf area and chlorophyll content, contributes to greater canopy photosynthesis and crop growth, increases the spikelet per panicle. That means it is increasing fertility in rice, that is percentage filled grains, and also increases grain weight. Improves the plant's tolerance of adverse climatic conditions, lodging insect pests and diseases. So it is acting as a defense, means it provides defense against lodging defense against insect pests and diseases. So it has very, very important role in plant. K deficiency, older leaves turn yellow initially around the margins. So first thing is that deficiency comes on older leaf, and typical symptom of K deficiency are tip burning and marginal firing. Tip burning and marginal firing means tip looks like burnt, and when you start burning something, color is brown. Initially color is brown, then it can turn to black. So tips are burnt and margins are also burnt. Leaf tips are yellowish brown and later margins may dry up. Symptoms appear first on older leaves, then along the leaf edge or margins, and finally on the leaf base. Upper leaves are short, droopy, and dark green in affected areas if the deficiency persists. Older leaves change from yellow to brown, and if the deficiency is not corrected, discoloration gradually appears on younger leaves. Yellow stripes may appear along leaf intervenes, and lower leaves may bend downward. Severe K deficiency, rusty brown spots on tips of older leaves and later spread to whole leaf, turn brown and eventually dry up. Irregular necrotic spots may also occur on panicles. Stunted plants, smaller leaves, short and thin stems. Tilling is reduced under very severe deficiency. Increased incidence of lodging, early leaf senescence, leaf wilting, and leaf rolling, especially when temperature is high and humidity is low. So leaf rolling can also happen in this case, in case of K deficiency, particularly in areas where there is shortage of water. So it is good up to some extent. It increases the strength of the plant to face drought also. For example, if you have drought condition or shortage of water or water stress in the soil, then 2% potassium chloride spray is suggested. 2% potassium chloride, KCl spray is suggested in sugarcane and in wheat also, if you have water stress, shortage of water. Increased percentage of sterile or unfilled spikelets caused by poor pollen viability and retarded carbohydrate translocation, reduced 1000 grain weight, unhealthy root system, increased incidence of diseases like brown leaf spot, bacterial leaf blight. So in rice, there are many diseases which are caused by many diseases in rice which are caused or which are encouraged by K deficiency. If your plants are deficient in potassium, then plant will be susceptible to many diseases, particularly bacterial leaf blight. Therefore, to manage diseases also, balanced plant nutrition is suggested. Many times farmers do not use potassium, so potassium should be used by them. Otherwise, plant will be more susceptible to certain diseases. But it is not always true that high potassium level or sufficient potassium level will protect the plant against the diseases. In most cases, low potassium, if you have potassium levels, low effect of K level on disease severity of several diseases. So if you have low K will increase the disease. Low K will increase the disease in for many fungi, and high K or sufficient K nutrition will decrease the disease. This is good that it protects the plant against the diseases. But there may be cases where high K may increase the disease incidence. This is for nitrogen and phosphorus. You can go through it. And now you see the case of potassium. Change in nutrient plus means increase or sufficient. So if sufficient K is there, Puccinia triticina attack decreases. This disease decreases. Puccinia graminis, sufficient K, disease is less. But in soybean, if you have Phytophthora shoji, if you have even sufficient or adequate K, the disease is more. That means here you need to have less K if you want to reduce the disease incidence. So wherever you see plus plus means increase K, plus means here increase in potassium and increase in disease incidence. Minus means decrease in disease incidence here. Alternaria solani, for example, if you have sufficient or adequate potassium, the disease incidence decreases. Now you see the K and lodging in wheat. So potassium deficiency may lead to increased lodging of cereals, particularly wheat, mainly because of the poor or lower strength of the straw. Straw is not having good strength due to shortage of potassium, therefore lodging occurs. You can see K and drought maize. If you have sufficient feeding of potassium, K plus, you can see leaf is fully opened. But under drought condition, if you have deficiency of K, the rolling of leaves may occur and leaf growth can be reduced. You can see symptoms in maize here, the marginal firing, and these are necrotic area. It will not recover back. And you can also see tips. Tips are burning, marginal firing. And you can see in tobacco also, it starts from the tip and goes towards the margin. Causes of K deficiency: low K supplying capacity of the soil, inadequate use of mineral K fertilizer, means you are not adding potassic fertilizer, low recovery efficiency of applied K fertilizer because of high K fixation capacity of soil or leaching losses. Potassium leaching can also happen. Students consider that potassium is positively charged ion, therefore it will not leach. It can leach if cation exchange capacity is not enough to hold all potassium. So K leaching is possible, particularly in coarse texture soils. Coarse texture soils, K leaching can happen. And K fixation can also happen in the interlayers of the silicate minerals. Complete removal of previous crop residues, particularly cereal residues, are rich in potassium. And do you know that paddy straw contains about 1.6 to 1.8% potassium, percent K in the form of K, 1.6 to 1.8% K in paddy straw. So it is rich, and you can work out if 6 ton paddy straw is produced in 1 hectare, how much K can be, potassium can be added if you recycle this straw in the soil. So what farmers are doing, they are completely removing the straw. Therefore, there is a depletion of potassium, and farmers are not adequately fertilizing soil with potassium. Wide sodium is to K ratio, magnesium is to K ratio, or calcium is to K ratio can lead to low supply, can lead to potassium deficiency. These ratios of these nutrients. Excessive amount of reduced substances in poorly drained soils, means in waterlogged soils where you got production of hydrogen sulfide, organic acids, and ferrous iron in abundance. Under these conditions, they causes retarded root growth, and hence K uptake is affected or reduced. Imbalanced fertilization, especially excess nitrogen or P fertilizer with insufficient K application. So it will also cause K deficiency. In direct sown rice during early growth stages, when the plant population is large and root system is shallow. Cultivar differences in susceptibility of K deficiency and response to K fertilizer. Hybrids need more K than inbred varieties. What are the corrective measures if you have low levels of potassium in the soil or it is not able to supply enough potassium? Follow strictly the fertilization schedule recommended for rice or any other crop. Means recommended dose of K should be applied. Apply optimum doses of NPK, NP fertilizer and also correct the micronutrient deficiency. So overall, for any other nutrient also, you need to go for balanced fertilization. Increase K uptake by improving soil management practices on root health. Means if we have better cultural practices, better agronomic practices, they can also improve the K availability and uptake. Addition of ISTA of previous crop is also good. Otherwise, one can go for fertilizer application. Most common fertilizer is potassium chloride, KCl, 50% K, and muriate of potash is its name, common name, and 60% K2O. Likewise, you can see potassium nitrate. It is also a good source of potassium, but it also gives us nitrogen, 37% K and 13% nitrogen, and it contains about 44% K2O in terms of K2O. And potassium nitrate is very good for spraying, and it improves the seed setting in cereals and in many other crops. Potassium sulfate is important for potato and tobacco. In potato and tobacco, if you apply potassium chloride or muriate of potash, then quality is affected, and also the shelf life. Shelf life is affected if you use potassium chloride. This is because of due to chloride ion, and this if you apply potassium sulfate, that problem can be overcome. Now, certain points in the end to remember for nitrogen. This is I am summarizing NPK. The deficiency of nitrogen is no doubt widespread in India. It is part of proteins, enzyme, amino acid. Many nitrogenous compounds are there in the plant, including nucleotide and chlorophyll. It promotes tillering in cereal crops. So it is really wonderful for tillering crops like rice, wheat, oats, but maize is not a tillering crop. And cereals need more nitrogen than legumes. Nitrogen deficiency leads to reduced growth and yield of crops, and deficiency symptoms are similar to sulfur deficiency, except that they happen on older leaves. Excess nitrogen results in dark green color of leaves with abundant foliage, restricted root system, crop lodging, few blossoms, and restricted fruit set. So these are the main deficiency results of nitrogen. Low use efficiency of nitrogen fertilizer, especially due to volatilization, denitrification, leaching, and runoff. Nitrogen can be supplied through organic manures, fertilizers, crop residues, green manures, and biofertilizer. So it is always advisable to go for integrated nutrient management or integrated nitrogen management. In case of phosphorus, it is necessary for formation of all oils, sugars, starches, transformation of solar energy into chemical energy, and withstanding stress. And we know that the topmost role of phosphorus is in energy, because it conserves energy in form of ATP, ADP, etc. Helps in rapid growth, encourages blooming and root development. These two roles are very, very important. It encourages flowering and root development. Deficiency leads to darker green color than normal with reddish purple cast, stunted plant growth and delaying plant development. Excess P may cause micronutrient deficiency, especially iron or zinc. I already told you that zinc have very significant interaction with phosphorus. If one is more, it will lead to the deficiency of the other. They need to be at optimum level. So that optimum level in soil is to be decided by scientists or by people, because the standard level of these two nutrients will vary with the soil type, climatic conditions, and so on. But it is not always antagonistic. I want to tell here, when their balance in soil is distorted, then iron and zinc interaction or antagonistic action happens. At ideal levels, they do not antagonize each other. Single superphosphate should be preferred over DAP because it also contains sulfur. Apply organic manures, chemical fertilizers, and biofertilizer along with incorporation of crop residue. So here, role of mycorrhiza is very, very important. in phosphorus mobilization and uptake. Potassium helps in CO2 assimilation, that is photosynthesis, translocation of proteins and sugars, enzyme activity, cell division, reduction of nitrates, fat synthesis, building of proteins, uh, photosynthesis, fruit quality, improvement and regulation of the osmotic potential of plant cells, makes plant more resistant to fungal diseases and insect attacks. Potassium points to remember crop producing starchy foods such as potatoes, sweet potatoes, and tapioca need more potassium. Older leaves turn yellow initially around margins and die. Irregular food development, tip burning, marginal firing. Addition of ester of previous crop improves potassium in the soil. So these were important thoughts on NPK. However, you should be taught these nutrient individually, because up till now, I think nobody has taught you nitrogen dynamics in soil, how it behaves in soil. So I don't know who will teach you. And then nitrogen in plant, okay, we covered nitrogen in plant here. I have shown you concentration, I have shown you deficiency symptom, toxicity symptom. So this is enough, nitrogen in plant. Then what is left? Nitrogen in soil and nitrogen in fertilizers. So I don't know whether Dr. Shive taught you nitrogen fertilizer or not. Did he teach you nitrogenous fertilizer? Hello? Anybody? Did anyone teach you
No, sir.
nitrogenous fertilizer?
No, sir.
What did Dr. Shive taught to you? What he has taught to you?
Sir, manual fertilizer policy, nutrient-based subsidy.
Because say nitrogenous fertilizer are very, very important. If it is not taught, then you can study yourself. Last night you received a book by Tisdale, Soil Fertility and Fertilizer. So in that book,
Yes, sir.
yeah, good. In that book, you please read nitrogenous fertilizer. For example, you can start with urea, how urea is manufactured, what are the methods of urea manufacture, and then how it behaves in soil. Means what is hydrolysis process of urea, how it is nitrification, how much time it takes to get nitrified. It depends upon temperature, moisture, this hydrolysis process, and also presence of enzyme in the soil. So you need to study urea, then ammonium sulfate, how ammonium sulfate is manufactured and what is its concentration of nitrogen in it, and how it behaves in soil, and where it is preferred. Similarly, ammonium nitrate. Ammonium nitrate is also important fertilizer, which contains nitrogen in both forms, ammonical and nitrate forms. And in European countries, ammonium nitrate is used in place of other fertilizer. It is preferred because it is cheaper, but you cannot sell it in the open market. You need some license. Do you know the use of ammonium nitrate is can be made in making some how to say
Explosive.
explosive, exactly, explosive,
Yes, sir.
in making some explosive. So therefore what happened, they started adding calcium carbonate or something like that, and they made calcium ammonium nitrate only for this purpose, that it should not be used as explosive. So therefore this calcium ammonium nitrate was made, this fertilizer. So you can see chemistry or some manufacture of calcium ammonium nitrate also, and NPK fertilizer, and also DAP. So these are the important nitrogenous fertilizer. Because I cannot teach you everything. I have got limitation. I can teach you. I can teach you those fertilizers also, but I don't know how much time is with you. So it is better to start reading nitrogen fertilizer from Isdale book called Fertility and Fertilizer. And you will also find ways to improve nitrogen use efficiency. Did someone teach you about how to improve nitrogen use efficiency? What is nitrogen use efficiency? Is it taught to you or not?
No, sir.
I don't know what's going to happen. We are really very poorly teaching the course if you are not aware of nitrogen use efficiency. So in this case also, you need to study some controlled release fertilizers. Actually, to improve nitrogen use efficiency, first thing is that source of nitrogen, right time, right method, you can go through, and also cultural practices. They can improve your nitrogen use efficiency. And use of controlled release fertilizers or slow release fertilizer and nitrification inhibitors is also important. Because this neem coated urea is in the market, even single grain of urea in India has to be neem coated. No, if you have common urea, you are selling it, then it is illegal in India. So it is neem coated urea. Neem acts as a, is it nitrification inhibitor or is it urease inhibitor? What this neem is doing in neem coated urea? Anybody? What this neem
Sir, nitrogen inhibitor.
inhibitor? Yes. So it acts as a nitrification inhibitor. So what happens when urea hydrolyzes? It is converted into ammonium. When urea hydrolyzes in the
Sir, ammonium carbamate first, then ammonium carbonate.
Good. And then it is nitrified. So it takes about 8 to 10 days under normal condition for urea to convert or to provide nitrate for plant growth. So here, what happens? You get two major steps in nitrification. This ammonical nitrogen is converted to nitrite and then nitrite to nitrate. So when ammonical nitrogen is converted to nitrite, then people want to use urease inhibitors so that this reaction is slowed down and there will not be there will be slow formation of nitrite. So that is your urease inhibitors. And then you can also use certain inhibitors that can stop the reaction number nitrification inhibitors. I'm sorry, nitrification inhibitors stops the stage 1. They controls or they inhibits the first reaction, that is conversion of ammonical nitrogen to nitrite nitrogen, sorry. The nitrification inhibitors reduces the reaction number 1 from ammonium to nitrite, because the second reaction, that is conversion of nitrite to nitrate, should not be stopped. Otherwise, this nitrite will become toxic to the plant. So therefore, first step is stopped by or reduced by nitrification inhibitor. That is neem oil. Neem oil does this job. And what urease inhibitors are doing, they are stopping or reducing the activity of urease. That is first step when your ammonium carbamate is formed. It is formed in the presence of urease. So what people are doing now, latest is that they are doing double coating with the urease inhibitor as well as your nitrification inhibitor. But all these inhibitors, there are certain characteristics, like they should be cheaper. They should be cheaper, they should not be expensive. They should not have any phytotoxic effect on the plants, and they should be effective, and they should increase the nitrogen use efficiency. So there are certain characteristics of these nitrification inhibitors. Similarly, we have got slow release fertilizers like sulfur coated urea, and many more ureas were made to reduce to have the slow release of nitrogen from fertilizers. So all these aspects are very, very important for MSc students. So at the moment, I suggest you to go through the book, try to make yourself knowledgeable in this area. But I can assure you that phosphorus I will teach you all the details, phosphorus in soil, phosphorus in plant, and fertilizers. So anything you want to say, any point, any question at this point of time? Otherwise, we go to the link number 2. We can go to link number 2 now.